In today's news, when will the government resume the test and go scheme? Will nightlife venues open this month? And why is it now okay to post pictures of tourists like mugshots? Well, more info on all of this in today's report. You're watching Thailand News Today, bringing you the latest headlines in Thailand and beyond. And in our first story, the government currently has no plans to resume the test and go scheme, which used to allow vaccinated travelers from approved countries to enter Thailand with minimal quarantine. Opat Gangwinpong from the Department of Disease Control says the rapid spread of the highly contagious Omicron variant, both here and abroad, means test and go is on hold for the foreseeable future. On Monday, Public Health Minister Anutin Charnvirakul said he would ask the CCSA to postpone the resumption of the scheme until the end of this month. Neither Anutin nor Opas have confirmed if the CCSA meeting is yet to happen or has already taken place. Meanwhile, the Omicron variant has lived up to its reputation in Thailand, spreading across the country at lightning speed and going from 205 cases on December the 24th to over 2,000 at the time of this story. The number of provinces where the variant has been reported has jumped from 33 to 54. According to Subhagit Siri Lak from the Department of Medical Sciences, most cases are in Bangkok, which has 585, followed by 233 in Kalasin, 180 in Roi Et, 175 in Phuket, 162 in Chonburi, and 106 in Samut Prakan. He says people should not panic as most Omicron patients have made a full recovery after a 2-week quarantine period. Meanwhile, Opat says officials are most concerned about infection clusters linked to bars, restaurants, factories, migrant worker camps, markets, and religious gatherings, basically normal everyday life. Thailand's health minister says the reopening of nightlife venues should be postponed given the number of businesses that have failed to implement disease prevention measures. Anutin Charnvirakul's suggestion comes as a number of clusters of the Omicron variant have led to major outbreaks that can be traced back to bars and restaurants in a number of provinces. Anutin says there is evidence that the outbreaks originated at bars and restaurants where alcohol was being sold and COVID prevention measures were not being adhered to. He accuses these venues as being the reason the government must now reconsider the planned reopening of other venues, such as nightclubs. According to the report, he goes on to slam the, quote, lack of conscience of such operators, blaming them for putting Thailand at risk of another COVID-19 wave and then threatening them with legal repercussions. I'm sure he'll make a lot of friends. Meanwhile, Opat Gangwinpong from the DDC says the Omicron variant will continue to spread across Thailand in the coming months. He has urged people to test themselves with antigen kits often and to work from home if they can. Phuket hotel operators have come up with a solution for asymptomatic guests who test positive for the Omicron variant but refuse to be transferred to a hospital. Gongsak Kupongsakorn from the Thai Hotels Association says in order to keep Phuket's reopening going, tourists who test positive but have no symptoms should be offered isolation facilities at their hotel instead of having to fork out for a hospital bed. Hotels have reported challenges in persuading guests who test positive without symptoms to go to a hospital, as most insurance schemes will not cover hospital treatment for asymptomatic patients. Guests are reluctant to be admitted. Besides the cost, guests who are not sick do not want to be made to spend time in a hospital. Gongsak says hotels cannot force people in this situation, and furthermore, some local hospitals just do not have the capacity to accept asymptomatic patients. Phuket is experiencing a surge in cases of the Omicron variant, with 149 new infections reported since January the 3rd. Of those, 21 were visitors who arrived through the island's sandbox scheme, while 14 were tourists who arrived via the Test and Go entry scheme, which has now been suspended indefinitely. Gongsak says that continuing to transfer hotel guests to hospitals against their wishes risks damaging the island's reputation among foreign tourists. He believes that if hotels can create isolation facilities for COVID-positive guests who are asymptomatic, this could be the solution. It's understood that over 50 hotels have offered more than 500 rooms to be used as isolation accommodation. Hotels with more than 100 rooms will set aside 10% for COVID-positive asymptomatic guests who choose to self-isolate at a hotel rather than in a field hospital. In related news, field hospitals and community isolation centers are being set up in Bangkok to handle the anticipated uptick of cases after the New Year's holiday. Officials have set up thousands of cardboard beds in gymnasiums to house the infected. Wow, they're making it extra enticing for people to come forward and seek care. There are now 40 community isolation centers that can support over 5,000 patients who have mild COVID-19 symptoms, while beds at field hospitals and hospitals can support around 25,000 patients. Photos of the Bangkok governor Aswin Kwanmueang visiting one of the cardboard box bed facilities was posted on the city's public relations Facebook page. The governor says Bangkok officials are following up on Omicron cases very closely and are preparing for an uptick in cases. The Education Ministry has decided to postpone all official activities planned to mark National Children's Day this Saturday. Education Minister Trinut Tiantong says the activities are not being cancelled permanently and may go ahead at a later date depending on the outbreak situation. Some of the planned activities in Bangkok included having 250 students visiting the Thai Prime Minister at the Education Ministry. Each province had its own Children's Day activities planned and now postponed. National Children's Day, or Wandek, is an annual celebration that takes place on the second Saturday in January to celebrate children's role in society and giving them an opportunity to visit government offices, military grounds, and meet with prominent politicians. Last year, the pandemic led the Royal Thai Army to suspend the events it had planned for the day, moving them online instead. Like wanted criminals, the mugshots of two Indian travelers were posted on a graphic released by the Chonburi Health Department. Why? Because they simply tested positive for COVID. After a search that was also highly publicized in Thai media, the 30 and 32-year-old were found in Bangkok. The two travelers entered Thailand through the Test and Go quarantine exemption scheme for those who are fully vaccinated. They tested negative on arrival. However, a second PCR test came back positive for both tourists, but by then they'd already left Chonburi, prompting officials to launch this very eerie Big Brother fugitive search. According to the Tourist Police Bureau, both tourists have now been found at Lertsin Hospital in Bangkok, where they are receiving treatment. The hospital confirmed the news in a post on its Facebook page yesterday. Last month, an Israeli tourist sparked a similar search when he disappeared from his quarantine facilities prior to his test result coming back positive. He then left Bangkok and traveled to other parts of the country before eventually being found on Koh Samui. He was flown back to Bangkok to face charges and deportation. And that's all for our report. Thailand News Today will be back tomorrow. Meanwhile, you're not up to date on the Thaiger.